What about this need for uniformity? We know the problems in the church as far as theological uniformity and women's ordination and all of these issues, but don't mingle this the need for financial reporting uniformity in with all of those issues. Uniformity really helps us team together and recognize that we are all working together as far as financial administration of the church. And the reality is that financial problems in one place impact the finances of another. If there's a financial scandal in Czechoslovakia, it's going to really pull things down over in Albania. It's just the nature of the way we work together. Also, as a church financial leader, I'm concerned about carrying the gospel to all the world. And if a church unit in Czechoslovakia fails, I we still have to financially we still have to figure out how to carry the gospel in there. It's not as if the Czechoslovakia leadership can just fail and we don't do business in that country anymore. We've got to continue doing business in a country. And so we're all in this together. Also, one of the issues about uniformity, to get us thinking correctly, is that what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So if I say that in my unit, let's say in a country in Europe, does not have to participate in the church global financial plan, that means every other country everywhere else in the world should have the same liberty. And so a country that might not have the capacity that you have. So sometimes we have to do the uniformity bit on just as a principle of setting a good example of working together and how it should be run. One big advantage of uniformity is the fact of comparability. It's very common for a person who is, say, over a union when the union covers just one country to say, oh, I don't see the point of it. We all just follow the country requirements and we're just happy. But just think about the poor treasurer in Southern Asia Pacific Division. He has to be giving guidance and leadership over in Pakistan and Lahore, the Pakistan Union Mission, and all the way over to the Southeast Asia Union Mission in Singapore. How can he do his job effectively with giving nurturing and guidance if everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes? We like to make statistical summaries, and in fact, I have seen almost every division treasurer that I know of keeps spreadsheets of all of their countries and tries to compare them and try to find the ones in the most trouble so he can be helpful. And so uniformity makes it much easier to compare your financial situations to peer organizations. And at some point, you will be in a position where you want to make that comparison. Also, policies. Now, the church operates, whether it's good or bad, based on policies. For example, we have a working capital policy that says you have to maintain a certain working capital. It says you should have working capital that is equal to such and such percent of your operating expenses. That seems very benign, but that very policy assumes that everyone is calculating working capital the same way and calculating operating expenses the same way. So, as long as we're going to use policy as a way to govern our different units, and I can't think of a better way, I'm all for not having any policies that apply to me, but I can see the need for them to apply for you. And so, as long as we're going to use policies, we've got to have somewhat uniform financial reporting so that the policies can make sense. One of the biggest reasons that we want uniformity is that we need to be able to do worker transfers and advancement. You may be in a country and you just do the accounting and the reporting the way you want to for that country. But what about the possibility that God calls you to be a financial leader in Pakistan or a financial leader in Korea or a financial? That's the way God works. Let's think about a treasurer that I know and have respect for. Well, she started out in Southern Asia Pacific Division as a faculty member at an Adventist university, and then she became the controller of that university and moved from there to be a hospital controller and then a hospital VP for finance. Then she moved from the Philippines to East Central Africa Division. In East Central Africa Division, she was the vice president for finance at Adventist University. Then she went to be a union treasurer in the Northern Asia Pacific Division. And who knows where God will take her next? You know how he is. He just moves people anywhere. He may be moving you soon. Well, if you can immediately hit the ground and know the account structure and the financial reporting rules and know how things operate, just think how much more useful you would be. And also notice in her story that she moved not only geographically, but she also moved from different types of organizations. So when we talk about uniformity, we're not only talking about uniformity geographically, but also uniformity as much as possible with the different kinds of organizations that we work with in the church. And then finally, training. Just imagine how cheaper things would be with uniform training. Uh, Training materials like the one you're listening to can be prepared and used many places. Uh, while many places have plenty of financial training available in the church, many places do not. And the ability to bring materials from one part of the world to another is just really amazing. And then finally, I know I said finally twice, but then finally think about audits. We're moving these auditors all around the world, and audit expense is a big issue nowadays. And just think how much cheaper it is with audits if they're encountering similar charts of accounts and similar business policies and accounting practices, and they don't have to figure out what's going on in the different organizations. Whenever they show up, they know what's happening. They can get in there, get their work done, and get gone. This does not mean that we don't have room for flexibility. The idea that we can put a little bit of different twist on the way we're doing things, the idea that different organizations have different priorities and financial concerns means their financial measurements may be different. So there's many reasons that there can be a good bit of flexibility. One thing that seems to work against uniformity in the church, and it really doesn't, but people think it does, so let's cover it, is that every country has its own tax authorities and its own nonprofit regulatory agencies. These agencies have the right and the authority to require information in the format they want, according to the rules they want. This in no way conflicts with the idea that we have cannot have uniform reporting requirements. Uh, General Motors has to prepare tax information for both the U.S. government and it has to prepare financial reporting information according to financial reporting rules for its financial statements. So the what it amounts to is duplicate reporting of similar information, but they're a little bit different based on the requirements of the church compared to the reporting requirements of the government. There's no reason you can't do both. No government that I know of prohibits you from reporting information on your financial activity to the church, to your committee, based on the church reporting requirements, and you can also prepare it according to the government requirements. It's a very I don't want to say simple process, but it's a very doable process that anyone can learn. And I'd be happy to prepare a video or coach your treasury staff on doing both. And so just because there's separate reporting requirements for your country, it doesn't mean that you don't have to work toward uniformity in financial reporting for the church. Just imagine IBM operating branches all around the world or Apple operating branches all around the world. Those folks have to comply with the government environments that they're in, and we respect and honor those. But they also have to report back to the mothership with the information, and we're not making this as a strong big deal, but it definitely would help the world church if everyone were on the same song sheet. This concludes our comments about uniformity. It really needs to be a high priority to set a good example for all organizations in the world church, for all of us as much as possible, to develop some uniform reporting standards.